You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Howdy! DragonCon 2019 is fast approaching, so fill up your buckets of rum and keep up with the latest news, announcements, interviews, and mispronunciations of guest names as only the Con Report podcast crew can make. Let us be your guide each month as we count down to the big event on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite media player. Listen to the DragonCon Con Report. It's almost as good as being there, but without the long lines, smelly gamers, and hangovers.
Touch it, stroke it, and undress it. I can see every part, nothing hides in the heart.
Welcome to Mission Briefing. This week we watched Bond movie number 7, 1971's Diamonds Are Forever? Yes. Yeah. No one said no when I said that. That's fine, right? Directed by Guy Hamilton. And Sean Connery's last canonical Bond film. On panel tonight we have
John
and
Jeremy
and
Mark.
Excellent. So I guess like always we'll start with the cold open, talk about the theme, and then get to the plot. But before we get too far into this, overall thoughts just to start off with, guys. What do you think?
It was entertaining. It was a little bit campy, but not over the top, and it was still rock'em sock'em kind of Bond. It was very Goldfinger.
Yeah,
very reminiscent of that.
I thought it went right up to that line and just danced on it, and it was.
Oh, we crossed it a couple times.
I mean, I will say,
what are you talking about? They had the henchmen with the hard hats on and everything. Like
some of them had lightning bolts on the hard hats for some reason.
I love that.
Blofeld shows up as the main villain, and he. And they make an English actor sound like a Texan for some reason, which he's very uncomfortable with. He even makes a joke at the expense of that. Well, it's just a lift, 007, or should I say elevator.
Transistors.
And it also had some of the best henchmen of any Bond movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Kid and Play. No, wait, Kid and Wint.
Kid and Wint.
Yeah.
And
I will call them Kid and Play.
And Bambi and Thumper.
Yeah.
Who aren't really henchmen. They're, I guess, Wynn's bodyguards? Question mark?
Yeah, they never really explain that, because he says, I see you met my friends, but he's being held captive there.
Yeah.
Right. It's very weird.
It makes you wonder just how captive he really was.
True.
And, like, you expect, it's supposed to be, what's his name? Hugh, the
Spruce Goose.
Yeah, that guy.
Oh,
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, right? Like, but
eccentric billionaire.
I expected him to be a guy in his 70s with like a beard, but it was just a guy who's like, oh, yeah, I've been disappeared for a few years, huh? Crazy. Anyway, so the movie starts off with Bond on a rampage. Right? I mean,
essentially.
Slapping women.
But doing it with nice puns, of course.
Of course. He takes a woman's bikini top off and strangles her with it and says, I'd like to get something off your chest. Where is he? It's funny. It's great. Like, this is the most Sean Connery gets to really revenge, which is funny because so often Bond movies don't acknowledge the others. And this is another actor. This is Lazenby. I mean, we presume he's revenging because he killed his wife from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but that's never mentioned.
Right.
Tracy is never said by name. It's not like in the Daniel Craig ones, where Vesper's name is said in all 4 of those movies, I think, almost mockingly. Here he's just like, time to kill Blofeld, and just starts strangling him. And then we end up at the plastic surgery clinic. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we learn, thanks to
It's a Blofeld factory.
It's a Blofeld factory, yes.
That was all I had. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, and it's really, this feels like a mission of the old Mission Impossible TV show, because he like keeps pretending to be people. Like they're about to do plastic surgery, and he goes, the surgeon goes, I find the most difficult thing is the nose. And then they go into surgery to make another Blofeld. And Sean Connery pulls off his scrubs, and it's Sean Connery.
Ta-da.
That's when the theme music cues.
Yeah, and Blofeld sees it's him. He straps him to the table, and
knocks him into lava, basically.
and he says, "Welcome
to hell."
What was it? It was like a mud bath or something, wasn't it?
I guess.
Yeah, but he makes sure to turn the heat all the way up so it boils.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And beforehand, there's a guy in a mud bath with a gun, and he pulls more gack on him. It's great. This is the most amazing beginning. And then
it's quintessential Bond. It really is.
Yeah.
It's him at the tail end of invading a secret lair. It's like, we can probably just presume he's gone through all the henchmen and everything like that. He's just now at the villain's lair.
And we get to this point where they're like, he punches a guy and there's not the voice syncing up, and he's like, he's in Cairo! And then he goes to Cairo, to Mali, to wherever, and then ends up in this plastic surgery clinic somewhere in hell, and drowns a guy. And that fades us right into another Shirley Bassey tune. Like, it's quite an opening to a Bond movie, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't waste any time. It's just full speed right from the beginning.
And it does a great job of, I mean, obviously, if you follow the trades, if you're reading Variety like we do, of course, you know that Sean Connery's back. And it, like, the movie poster, which is the icon for this episode, it just says Sean Connery is back as James Bond. But they even hide that until he pulls off, a disguise, and then it's like, oh, it's Sean Connery's back. And it's great. It's really great. I do kind of wish they had gotten Telly Savalas back as Blofeld, but we'll get to Blofeld for a bit. What did you think of this Shirley Bassey song?
It was good. It was classy. It was back to the lounge singing type thing with the Goldfinger, because she did that as well. And yeah, I liked it. It was catchy.
It is one of the ones that you definitely remember. Like it, Goldfinger, like there are a lot of them that I maybe couldn't place, but this one definitely, just from the title.
And I think, guys, if you're listening now, we're going to do an episode near the end where we compare all the Bonds. But if you ask me about Sean Connery as Bond, I think of a lounge singer type. And we're about to get to Roger Moore, and his themes are almost always more poppy. It's Carly Simon singing, The Spy Who Loved Me. It's Live and Let Die.
Disco era.
Yeah. And it ends with Duran Duran, and it's very poppy. This, same with Daniel Craig going back to Adele, kind of singing in like a smoke-filled room, right? I like that kind of sound, and it sounds like a Bond movie to me.
Appropriate for this one, considering we're in Vegas for a good bit of it, right?
Yeah, and we had Nancy Sinatra a couple movies back, and you're just like, oh, there is mob connections all over this film. That's great.
How do you think James Bond got made?
Right, no, I'm sure. I would like to see an English mafia that sounds as refined as this. I just imagine some sort of Guy Ritchie movie, just a bunch of Liverpudlian street toughs beating the crap out of people with pool cues. Yeah. Come on. But that's because the well-speaking men are the good guys here,
Well, always, yeah.
It's actually something you brought up a few movies back that we've been using constantly now. The gentleman villain and the gentleman spy,
There are rules to this game.
Yeah, and Bond makes sure Bond has a nice room,
Are you comfortable?
Yeah. Are you comfortable? Yes, of course. We'll have to get to the port scene, my God. But yeah, the montage here involves cats, diamonds, and solid colors, which is nice. It's not as graphic as You Only Live Twice. But yeah, I think it's not a bad start to a Bond movie.
And it's a catchy song that I found myself noticing over and over again in the theme throughout the movie. Because I know they do that with the other ones, but this one, for some reason, it stuck out. That this one is just catchy, and you can play it fast, you can play it slow, it's either in the foreground or the background, and it's still noticeable.
Well, and I think it all goes back to the fact that this is a Guy Hamilton movie, and he did 4. He was also the second unit director on another half dozen, but he did Goldfinger. He did this one. He did Live and Let Die, which is the next one with Roger Moore, and then he does The Man with the Golden Gun, which, frankly, I like The Man with the Golden Gun. I think it goes a little bit more back to form. It's Bond against another guy. It's not an entire army, or the entire drug cartel of New Orleans, which is the next one. But we'll get to the next one when we get to the fucking next one. Before we get too far into this, Mark, will you give us our plot summary?
Sure. As you are mentioning, it starts out with him traveling the world in a quest to kill Blofeld, which he succeeds at, or so we think. But when he returns, he finds that he has a case waiting for him. There's a large amount of diamonds that have been stolen from South African mines, and 2 assassins have been killing off everybody one by one in the chain of the smuggling ring. So Bond goes undercover as a Mr. Peter Franks, a diamond smuggler himself, and discovers eventually that the diamonds are being routed back to Blofeld, who's not dead at all.
He's still very much alive, Mr. Bond.
You might say he's double alive.
I see what you did there.
Because
Double O live.
Oh, yes. That's what I meant.
That too, yeah.
Yes. So now...
Oh, man. Very good. Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry, were you done?
Well, there's the satellite.
There is a satellite.
There's a satellite, yeah.
There is a fake moon landing set.
Right.
Yeah.
The diamonds have a purpose. And I do want to say, it's you did a good job. It does remind me of, in some ways, the structure of Goldfinger, although this is much more complicated. But at the end, it's like a crazy plan. He's stealing diamonds to make a giant space laser to blow up missile silos, like so that he can become the nuclear power of the world, kind of. But at the same time, destroy all the nuclear. It's like to make the one weapon that destroys other weapons, so he can have the weapon.
And yet, it starts with, Blofeld's dead. You need to move on. Oh, here's this diamond smuggling ring that we think will affect diamond prices. Go check it out, would you?
Yeah, that was my biggest problem with it, is why would James Bond be investigating, diamonds being smuggled?
Smuggling, yeah.
How is that an MI6 issue?
I mean, right? But I mean, it's also kind of a jab at, I guess, De Beers. Like, this is like so important to the national interest that you have to like that.
Well, I guess at this point, South Africa would they have still been British?
I mean, I think they were.
I guess
yeah.
the
I think
60s,
it was till the 80s.
The 60s, everybody spun off. So I don't know. But I'm sure British companies and the government still had interests in South Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, kinda. I mean, well, we should start with the start of that scene where Bond is there and M is just like walking around with him and showing him diamonds, and he's like, "This is a large diamond." He goes, 87 carats, 120 uncut, and he's like, 007, are you even paying attention? He's like, yes, 87 cut, 120 not cut. Because he thinks it's stupid too. I mean, he does.
He's like, Blofeld and Inspector are still out there. Come on, man.
Yeah, and then they sit down. Well, then we have the most incredibly Bond scene where he's like, what do you know about diamonds, 007? Oh, no, that's what we have the port scene, right? And he goes, oh, this is a delicious port. 51, I believe. And he goes... And M goes, everyone knows that port doesn't have a vintage. He's like, I was talking...
He's so happy to get one up on Bond. Like, come on, man.
And Bond is like, I meant the original wine it's based on. 1851, I believe. And he goes, precisely, 007. And he looks at M, and M's like, oh my God. It was a long day for M. M was done. That's amazing. And then he goes, well, what do you know about diamonds, Mr. Bond? And he goes, well, they've replaced the dog as a girl's best friend. They're a symbol of marriage, and they can cut glass. That's about it. And he goes, thank God. That's all, something you don't know a lot about. It's amazing. The movie starts out by kicking Sean Connery. They even give him a gray wig this time, which is great. He has gray sideburns.
He's definitely aged a bit in this movie. He's not that young, svelte guy from Goldfinger.
Well, and it's interesting because they replace him with Roger Moore, who I think is 3 years older than him, but looks younger.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he also doesn't do as much physicality, and he doesn't kill as many people. I mean, Roger Moore didn't like guns even. Like, so he almost never has his PPK. But, like, here Sean Connery's, like, the elder statesman almost. It's kind of interesting to see. But that reminds me, before we get too far, we have a new panelist, our new Bond expert, Jeremy. Jeremy, what's your Bond background? We had talked about this beforehand, but I wanted you to be on this one because I know it's one of your favorites.
I would probably go so far as to say it is my very favorite. First Bond movie I ever saw was GoldenEye, because I was 14 and it came out in theaters. My parents, of course, had seen all the Bond movies, so when they saw GoldenEye, they took me to that. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, I'm sure it was the same year, TBS had their annual Bond marathon. And the first classic Bond movie I saw was Diamonds Are Forever. So I kind of based my opinion of Bond on that one, and all other Bonds I saw later were compared to that one. And yeah, I liked it even more now because I could finally understand a lot of it, and it's just even more bizarre than I remember, but that's a good thing.
No, I agree, and it's and you know, for those of you who listen to this and not Myopia, Jeremy is one of probably our best film critics. And I mean, it's not just to flatter him. He's someone who knows film, and so for him to say it's one of his favorites, it's important to us on the panel. But additionally, for those of you who listened to last week's episode on Her Majesty's Secret Service, we agreed it was weird for a Bond film. It's an excellent movie, just doesn't make a good Bond movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something else, which is interesting because since I know Jeremy loves that movie and I like it in a non-Bond context, so we wanted to have him on this as another voice, and it makes an interesting comparison. But regardless, we should keep moving ahead here because there's a lot to talk about in this crazy movie. And the first thing I think we should start with is the two assassins you alluded to, Mr. Kit and Mr. Wynn. Wint, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, what do you think, Mark?
It's funny because I remember bits and pieces of this from when I saw it as a kid, and my parents watched it and everything, and I remember them distinctly. And I can see why now rewatching it, because they are complete characters, like just sort of iconic in a way. Like,
yeah,
they're bizarre in a good James Bond kind of way.
Totally.
Yeah, they're one of the stronger points of this movie. I would think that they're the henchmen, sure, but they're not like a I don't know, Mayday kind of henchman where they're just kind of the muscle. These guys are actually smart. They've got their own wit to them, and they're actually really good at what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, considering we don't see Blofeld until at least half the movie is done, like, we spend most of the time thinking they're the main bad guys.
Yeah.
And they carry it off well.
Well, and I think what's important is what I mean, like Jeremy was saying, they're in charge, but what John was saying is it's not like they're not snipers on the hill. You know, it's not a war movie where there's just nameless killers. These guys are characters, and they don't just have one MO. You know, it's not like Jaws with his strongman teeth or Oddjob with his hat, which is, I mean, these are fleshed out characters, and maybe that's part of Guy Hamilton's thing. I mean, think of the 4 movies he did. It's The Man with the Golden Gun, which has Scaramanga, and what's the little guy?
Tattoo,
thank you. You have Live and Let Die with, right? I mean, it's all characters, right? And then you have this one, and you have Goldfinger, which also has Oddjob. He's really good at creating henchmen who matter.
Mm-hmm. More so, I would say, than villains.
Well, I mean, it's the gentleman villain idea, mm-hmm. right? Like, they're just there, and of course you have the German doctor who's making a laser beam, right? And just a guy reading off time numbers. We'll get to the 6 minutes and counting. It's just a guy there staring at a giant old microphone and a clock, ignoring the fact that the world is literally burning behind him.
That's a man who loves his job.
Yes. He puts on that tie and short sleeve button down every day, and he's going to read a clock, damn it.
This job has good benefits.
I just love that day when he's counting down and goes 45, 43, 44. Oh, shit! And then takes a sick day just to rebound.
Or he pulls out a gun and just shoots himself on the spot. I have failed you.
You had one job. Come on, count.
And he comes back from like a 3-week vacation or whatever, and there's a Timex that's digital, and it clicks down, and he's like, and then it disappears the next day, and he's like, I don't know what's happened.
It's true, because he really doesn't do anything else. He's not like a coordinator. He doesn't have like a clipboard and some pens and paper. He just reads the clock.
After the rig blows up, he's floating out at sea. He's like 3 days and counting.
It has been 73 hours since I was rescued. 73 hours and 1 minute. The reigning champion of 99 bottles of beer on the wall. All right. So Kit and Wint are, the coded gay friends, I guess?
Yeah, at one point they walk off with their...
Yeah, they're holding hands.
Yeah.
In fact, I
they
think
walk into the sunset,
scene,
yeah.
But it's so great. He's like, oh, Mr. Kit, you notice there's a scorpion? Perfect killers, Mr. Wint. Perfect killers. And they take it, and the guy shows up. Oh, you're the dentist. I'm sorry that we weren't there to pick you up. We're here instead. They'll be a little late. My friend's jaw. It's just hurting so badly. His wisdom teeth. He hasn't had them. Would you mind looking? And they kill him with the scorpion? It's amazing.
I got the impression these guys, they love what they do, but they also love a unique death. Because they don't just take some guy out and shoot him. And I don't think you ever see them with guns. They use scorpions, they use bits of tube, they use a blowing up cake, and skewers.
Well, and it's funny you say that. I imagine that, like, well, Mr. Kit, it's your time to try to come up with a plan. Well, Mr. Wint, I have a wonderful plan. What if we used a scorpion? Well, Mr. Kit, we haven't used a scorpion yet. Right?
What a great idea.
Because that's their dialogue. And I would guess Kit is an actor and Wint isn't, because one of them's delivery is just like, my goodness. That would be interesting, Mr. Wint. It's so stilted, but it's perfect.
I would like to know what went through the director's head when he cast these two guys, because they look radically different. And the guy with the mustache, the long hair, and who's balding, it makes you wonder, like, how good was his audition that he got this gig?
But at the same time, it's the kind of thing that other directors, because it's a movie series, so everyone has to base it on the other ones, right? Where you can easily miss the message. These are distinctive looking actors, so the second they show up in whatever form, you recognize them, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're not Jaws, right? Because Jaws can't put on a wig and pretend to be someone else. We'll get to the cross-dressing scene. We'll get to the cross-dressing scene in the third act, because that's weird. An old lady holding a cat. Oh wait, it's Blofeld. With that strong chin. Oh, there's a lot of strong chins and jawlines in this movie. But Kit and Wint steal this movie.
And
then Bambi and Thumper come close.
Well, they were only in one scene, weren't they?
They were, but they were awesome.
Yeah.
Flying kick. And they even do the same thing. They pass it off. Thumper, it's your turn. Thanks, Bambi. Kicks him in the crotch. Sean Connery. And again, you have to remember, Sean Connery is the 6'2" former Mr. Universe. Scotsman. He's built, and he's not that far out of that still. He's been in the movie series for a decade. But he's still pretty strong. And these two women believably kick the crap out of him. There's no stunt work here, really. Yes, he's not actually being right.
Lots of backflips.
But I believe they could do a backflip. I don't believe that Sean Connery could. We should kind of get a little bit further into this movie. What happens next? Where am I? I'm lost. What we should talk about is Guy Hamilton's explaining the diamond industry with a series of cuts. You remember this? So,
the stealing of the...
Right. So, you want to explain this?
Yeah, well, apparently, and this does actually tie into the plot, is some of the workers in the mines are stealing the occasional diamond. They either put it in their shoe or put it in their mouths. And when they're done for the day, they go to the dentist, who... It's weird. He picks it out with a tweezer, but can't the guy just reach into his own mouth and pull out the diamond? What was going on?
and this whole thing, it's interestingly shot, because you have the minister from De Beers or whoever he is explaining how we have good men that we trust and wholeheartedly believe it. He says it like 4 times, and they keep cutting back to them stealing diamonds and going to this dentist. And then Kit and Wind come back in, and they're killing off these people. The dentist is the first one they kill. They go to this little old lady who's teaching English to South African children, who's also has diamonds in this sack.
In the Bible, wasn't it?
Hidden in the Bible, yeah. And she ends up dead in Amsterdam because they end up... Take some pictures of the canals. That'll be great for the children to learn from. Hey, Mr. Kid, you took a picture of the canal. Isn't that great for the children? Like, it's so great. And then finally we end up with Jill St. John, who is Tiffany Case. And Bond is there to try to figure out what's going on. That's when he becomes Peter Franks.
Who is a diamond smuggler and assassin? Or
so
something?
Well, I mean, and it lets us know, first of all, I don't think we know all the parties in this movie, which is interesting. Because why are they killing off the dentist? Why are they killing off the teacher? We don't really understand that. Is it because the plane is over? Is it because they've stolen enough diamonds?
I think so, yeah. I don't know if they say exactly who Franks is going to get the diamonds to, but I'm guessing that, Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wynn are intercepting them so they can get them to Blofeld instead.
Well, and then we get to the Mafia in Vegas, and I don't know if they're a third party. Like, and I'm not saying that the movie is badly explained. I like the idea that someone might be at war at Spectre that we don't know, because that kind of happens before. But here, it's all played for fun, and that's kind of neat that Bond ends up in the middle of a gang war almost, which is kind of silly, but also amazing, right? Like, it is. And I know I'm trying to move the plot forward, but that's because there's a lot of plot in this one that makes sense. It's not like Thunderball, where it's just like 2 acts of plot and then a third act, which is like, something at Disney World where you're under the sea. It's like it's a ride at Epcot where things just float fucking by. But here we're actually talking about something that happens. Bond ends up in Amsterdam, and what's her name? The teacher, who I forget the name of, dies. And he realizes that people are stacking up. So he ends up looking for Jill St. John, who's playing Tiffany Case. And she has a bunch of diamonds. She says 50,000 carats worth of diamonds that she's trying to smuggle out. So she's hiring Peter Franks, who's a tall... I'm going to say he's a Dutch-looking man. He's English, but he looks like my uncle, and my uncle's Dutch. So, named Peter Franks. And this is where we get our first Q gadget. And it's fingerprints that are Peter Franks' fingerprints.
No, there was one in the cold open.
Oh, that's right.
The trap in his suit where... they go to confiscate his gun, and there's basically a mouse trap.
It's a mouse trap that crushes fingers, which is awesome. It is awesome.
Because it's so simplistic. It's like, how did they never think of that before? Just have a simple trap in your coat, and when someone reaches in, you got him.
It's the Jessica Rabbit school of thought.
It should say Acme on it.
Well, and it's the perfect thing for someone who gets their pockets searched all the time. Mm-hmm. It's so good. You're right. No, you're right. And actually, Q ends up with jokes in this movie. Like, he's comic relief, and Jill St. John is bored with his jokes, so she wanders off, which is awesome. Oh, man. We even get shtick. This movie is fantastic. We're not even a third of the way through it, and I'm ecstatic. So he goes to visit Tiffany Case, who tells us that her name comes from the fact that her mom gave birth in Tiffany while they were picking out the ring, which is awkward.
That's a story. Yeah,
she was born to be a diamond smuggler.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you.
You got to imagine she was born in the 50s, puritanical times. Can't have a kid without being married, right?
Literally, by the minute. It was close. There's no Mr. Case, no T is for Tiffany. Tiffany Case, yes.
But of course.
She figures out that it's Peter she plays the game. You know, she's worried that someone's coming to steal the diamonds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Bond pours himself a drink, and she goes, "Oh, I have ice in the other room for you. I can get you some ice." So she takes his glass. I figured it was to poison him. It's been a while since I'd seen this. But what she does is she blows powder on it, dusts it, takes a picture of his fingerprint, brings him back the glass with the ice in it, then goes back to dress because it's Jill St. John. She's effectively naked this whole movie. But then is able to compare the fingerprints to Peter Frank. And it turns out that Bond has... I was thinking MI6 had hacked her files, which they hadn't. He had little fake fingerprints, which is great. It's straight out of... well, it's something that everyone else rips off. It's such a simple idea. It's like in... is it Thunderball, where he has the license plate that flips over?
Yeah.
It's just... It's one of these ideas that's so simple that you're like, of course. And it works because I like Daniel Craig and I like the Craig movies for the most part. But a lot of it is CGI and like voodoo future magic. This is all practical. It makes perfect sense. Of course you'd have that kind of thing. Why not? It's great.
You gotta wonder though, like, did he know that she was gonna fingerprint him, or does he just go into most situations with that? You think he has like a trash can full of dead fingerprint skin? Like, if there's ever a murder committed there, the police are gonna see them like, oh my god, 80 people have been killed here.
Oh man! And then it's Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt from Seven. He's like, it never gets any easier. just bodies everywhere. That'd be great. Oh man, the Jacob's Ladder version of this, of course, is that he's actually dead the whole time, and there's just bodies everywhere. He's like, this time I'm Peter Franks. It's awesome. That's so great. And Q's like, yes, fake fingerprints, and there's just hands above him everywhere. And he's like, this time you're going to be Peter, and just taping him on. It took a turn. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
She takes the fingerprints, tells him, or figures out that, yes, okay, he is Peter Frank, and he asks, where are the diamonds? And she kind of just points up, and it's like, oh, they're in heaven, they're right above us, in the chandelier. And well, that's clever, I guess.
I guess. Yeah. He looks up and he's like, oh my, so many diamonds. I could retire from this. I mean, I will help you smuggle them for $50,000. So what do you think about Jill St. John? Some of her lines are kind of stilted. She's not a great actress. She's fine, I think.
She plays the role all right.
I do like how she's open. I mean, Bond comes into the room, right? She buzzes him in, and she's naked with blonde hair. And then she comes back in wearing essentially blonde panties with brown hair. And he goes, weren't you a blonde? And she's like, well, what do you prefer? And of course, I guess it's supposed to be a joke, right? Because the gentlemen prefer blondes, right? Like it's the... who's the director? It's that
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
Yeah.
Oh god.
I thought it was, and it doesn't matter. I thought it was someone famous that I should know, but I didn't. But then he goes, as long as the collars match the cuffs.
They made a pubic hair joke.
They did. And then of course the next scene she comes back as a redhead and he goes, well, I don't prefer redheads, but I guess it matches your temperament. And you're just like, said the Scotsman about Irish people. But I mean, like, in some ways that's the best acting she does, because there's that whole scene in the gas station which is so bad. Hey, Curly, why don't you top me off and give me a sticker? Question mark?
Stamps.
Stamps? Question mark? I started to write down the plot of this and got lost halfway through.
I don't think you were the only one.
Yeah, no. And then that's not to say I didn't enjoy the movie, but if I were Leonard Maltin, I'd be like, it was a roller coaster from start to finish.
Because I think this movie did well in the first act, but once they got to Vegas, it just kind of ground to a halt. And
there's a lot of who's got the diamonds, who switched the diamonds on who, and where's the diamonds, and who's got what, and where.
And then you throw in the Willard White mystery, and it just kind of goes all over the place.
And well, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to see that. I would say a good 60% of the movie takes place in Vegas. We're used to Bond, globetrotting and he basically does all of that in like the first 20 minutes. He sees like 5 countries in the first 20 minutes, and then they just do it in Vegas the rest of the time, and that's not exactly the most exotic of locations.
Well, and in the 60s, or I guess 71, it's not a fancy location either.
It's not a place you want to be.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, we'll get a little bit more into it in a second, but like Bond does the kind of classic, well, I'm going to a casino, I'll wear a white tux with, like...
Not standing out at all.
And like, it's just a bunch of Americans wearing 70s clothing, and he goes see a comedian who's just doing shtick, and he plays like blackjack, and he just is playing the slots. It's the least classy thing possible until they end up in the bridal suite at the White House. Sorry, the White House. Yeah. Everyone got pensive. I apologize. I mean, it's so funny because in the last couple movies, Bond has ended up gambling in Monaco or in Switzerland, and it's been very classy. And they're like, well, those Americans. And it turns into the Dukes of Hazzard at one point after a car chasing scene. It's kind of rough.
I guess it's a good kind of antithesis to what he's been doing so far. It's more like, this is America. It's not just the highbrow people gambling. Vegas is for everybody. Go Vegas.
Go Vegas. Yeah, and I mean...
This movie brought to you by Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. If in doubt, ask, I guess. I'm sorry. We're going to talk about Blofeld's final oil derrick base, but it's something else. So he hooks up with Tiffany Case. They end up trying to get into America. But to get to America, they have to figure a way to smuggle the diamonds. Well, the real Peter Franks ends up escaping from the customs office and ends up trying to show up to actually figure out what's going on with Tiffany Case to presumably apologize for being late. Bond pretends to be Dutch, which, of course, as a 9 million feet tall Scotsman, he pulls off perfectly. Which floor would you want to?
I think he says, like, how is your floor?
How is your floor? Yeah, exactly. You are English, sir. And he goes, yes, I am English. And he goes, I speak English. They get into an amazing fight, which involves an elevator, one of these old European cage elevators. So there's open sides, and Bond nearly gets his head cut off by a floor coming, and they end up fighting. Bond ends up besting him after the real Franks grabs a crowbar. Bond ends up grabbing a fire extinguisher, which is quite a scene. Bond ends up slipping his wallet into Frank's pocket. So it's Tiffany Case who finds out that the guy's name is James Bond, who is famous, apparently, because he's on the cover of Spy magazine every month.
I was going to say, if someone like Tiffany Case knows who James Bond is, and she's just a presumably low-level smuggler, he's got to be pretty damn famous.
Yeah.
To the point where you should start using another name.
To the point where if you change him with another actor, people might notice. Well, of course I'm James Bond. We don't get a James Bond in this movie because he's pretending to be Peter Frank until everyone knows he's James Bond.
Well, we get a Peter Franks.
we do indeed. But unfortunately, that spin-off series never took place. Although, thinking about it, Roger Moore looks a little bit like Peter Franks. He's got that kind of light brown, red hair with the comb over and the huge schnoz. Yeah, it worked out. But they use the corpse of this fake James Bond to smuggle the diamonds into America, right? They pretend he's dead. And they have this wonderful steel coffin that they fly back on a Lufthansa flight, who apparently paid money to smuggle corpses. And they get picked up by the next round of crazies, which is this weird mafia group running out of Vegas.
In like a weird church, wasn't it? They take him to a church that was just...
The Slumber Company.
Yeah, it struck me as the sketchiest church you would ever have.
It's Vegas, come on.
It's Vegas.
Even for Vegas, this looked pretty damn sketchy.
But at least it wasn't a drive-through.
Although effectively the crematoria part was a drive-through because he turns to ashes in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But so they get to the airport, which is very clearly McCarran. They even make reference to it when we see them having slot machines in the lobby in another scene. but you have to go to customs to check in a registered corpse, apparently. And of course, Felix Leiter is the one working for the TSA at the time. And he's like, so, Mr. Franks. And it turns out to be another Felix. This is the 9th actor in 7 movies.
Poor Felix.
Poor Felix. And we've had some great Felixes. And this guy he's fine. He's meh.
I wonder if it's just a running joke that Felix can't be in more than one movie before you have to change the actor. Felix is a code name more than anything else.
Well, apparently the part of the problem was in the first one, in Dr. No, Felix is much more of Bond's equal, and the guy thought he was getting his own spin-off, and then they're like, fuck you, we can replace you. We can have 1,000,000 Felixes. Although, for those of you who out there have probably heard the old joke that, if anything, Bond is a Time Lord, Felix is like a Walmart brand. He's the GoBots of Time Lord. He can't survive one season before there's 9 of him. But this Felix is fine. He's competent. He shows back up. He's a decent actor. He never has the polish of Bond. He tries to make a quip or two. I don't think he pulls it off. He does have American early 70s sideburns, which is great. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This movie...
The 70s hit this movie hard.
Except for Bond, who seems to still be out of 1951 or whatever.
He's still got the sideburns going.
He does have sideburns, but he still dresses right, which is fine, I guess.
He's bought into the mini skirts and mini skirts and go-go boots.
At least he isn't wearing a kilt like from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But we should make it clear here that, of course, Tiffany Case does have a perm the whole time.
At least Bond doesn't.
At least Bond doesn't. Although Roger Moore with a perm would have been something to see.
Oh, God.
It's a good thing I didn't say that too loud. I'm pretty sure the next Bond is going to lighten it. Well, we'll get to predictions later, but much later. Check back in December.
But we get to one of the more inventive ways to kill Bond. Which they take the diamonds off the now disposed of body of Frank, and it's like, oh hey, these are diamonds, and okay, Mr. Frank, it's your turn to get in the coffin and get in the furnace there. And Bond wakes up from being knocked out, and the coffin is on fire. He's in the furnace. It's heating up. He can't get out. He's very tense. And then all of a sudden he's
back out.
Oh, by the way, these diamonds are fake. Fuck.
And the coffin is scorched even, which is a nice touch. And this is where the complications come in for me with the plot.
Yeah.
Because so what is supposed to happen is, he's pretending that it's his brother who died, right? And so he's supposed to inter his brother in this kind of wall for cremated urns, right? And so there's this one specific one that says Slumber Company, and it has a little curtain across, and there's the brocade and everything. Bond opens it up to put the urn in, and then Kit and Wint take the urn, knock him out, and then the mafia guy who was who we also have driving the hearses and is also part of the apparently owns the priest who's in charge of this mortuary, and then and that's when he ends up in the coffin. Wint and Kit are the ones who are put him in the coffin. They even turn on the music, and we get them making puns and witticisms because they're the best.
Back to they're awesome.
Because they're awesome. And he goes, it's such. We make such beautiful music, Mr. Wint. And we should point this out. They're coded gay for the 70s. You can't have openly gay characters, really. But they do walk off holding hands, like we mentioned. And they get this line where Wint goes, she's beautiful
For a woman.
And the other guy's so butthurt, right?
He gives him a strange look.
He gives him the straightest look. He's like, And they're like, for a woman. It's so great. They dress the same and walk off holding hands. It's so good. They're the best henchmen ever.
Which is why once they get to Bond, I'm really disappointed. But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So the mafia shows back up, and he's like, these diamonds are fake. Where's the real ones? He goes, well, when will you give me real $50,000? And he goes, what do you mean? Well, you wouldn't have burnt the money alive if it were real money. right? I mean, it makes sense. It's him noticing as a spy and being completely cool and collected coming out of a crematorium.
That's a hell of a bet, though.
He was oddly calm for almost being burned alive.
That's the typical, that's a very common James Bond escape in my mind. He gets in a situation and then it somehow resolves itself, and he's just like, yeah,
he straightens his tie.
Totally.
Yeah. This movie very foreshadowed the Roger Moore era, didn't it? Like, and the whole Pierce, like, underwater, fixing his tie, like, Bond's like, it was a little warm in there, wasn't it? Like, regardless, the Mafia doesn't show up as much as I hoped they would. It would have been great, but they didn't.
So were the mortuary guys Mafia, or were they not? Were they with...
It was never clear. I figured they were. They're in Nevada at this time.
Okay.
And
Mafia's everybody, aren't they?
And they're dressed like the Blues Brothers. We'll get back to the Blues Brothers in a second. Because this precedes the Blues Brothers movie came out in 83?
2, 3.
Yeah.
It's got a good decade on this one.
On this movie. And we'll get back to the fact that I was really hoping it was Joe Don Baker for a while, but it wasn't. Regardless, Bond ends up deciding to stay, I think he says the Tropicana. He name drops some casino, and Bond decides to go for a bit of gambling, to play a game of gamble, which we don't understand because they don't ever clarify. But of course, he's the only one not dressed like white trash because Americans are just trash in the 70s. But he does stop in to see a show, and this show is by the worst hokey stand-up comedian ever. What was his name? Do you remember?
Shady Tree and his acorns.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Who were the showgirls with the booby tassels that were like down to the floor?
That was it. That's all they were wearing too, and headdresses.
Vegas for families.
Which really says something about his act, I guess, really.
Something to distract you.
Right.
But he makes that joke, right? Because at the end, Kit and Wint show up and go to his dressing room, and he goes, "We have something to say about your show. It was fantastic, but we'd like to make some suggestions." And he goes, "Boys, I haven't changed my act in 40 years. They kill him.
Well, obviously he should have.
and then Headquarters makes the joke. He goes, "Boys, the diamonds were fake. We need to... Don't kill Shady Tree yet." He goes, "Well, we have a complication."
Most unfortunate.
Most unfortunate, Mr. Wint. This is... I could talk all day about their characters. They're the best things. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Of them, Sean Connery seems to not be phoning it in as much as Thunderball or some of the later ones, where he's been... Like, he's like, this is going to be my final one. Might as well go out. Guy Hamilton's back. I would guess... Me and Jeremy were talking about this. I would guess he got some say in the director if he came back for one movie. And he clearly liked working with Hamilton, and Hamilton had fun with this one. But these two guys steal the show. Definitely. They do. And you could blur a lot of these movies together, but you can't forget those.
Nope.
Someone move us on. What's next? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
We go somewhere.
We do. We go to Circus.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because he meets back up with Tiffany because they lost her, right? They were trying to track her down to get the diamonds.
Because the diamonds turned out to be fake, and so they're looking for who has the real diamonds, right?
Right.
And they think she does?
And so at this point, it becomes a different kind of heist movie. It almost becomes like she's kidnapped them and there's a ransom or something, right? Because she has them and they're trying to get them, but she also wants them because he's not sure who she works for, right? Because we at this point still don't know Blofeld is Blofeld, right?
At this point, we still think it's a diamond smuggling ring of some sort.
We still think it is, and somehow maybe White is involved because the more they're in White's casino, the more everyone seems to be evil. I mean, and it's not...
This is Las Vegas, I mean.
I mean, it's not subtle evil. I mean, yeah, and it does kind of seem like Guy Hamilton's like, you know where the Mafia is? The Mafia would be a fun Bond villain. Right?
More so than the cartel, but we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to a lot of weird things. This movie keeps getting more and more complicated. Regardless,
they establish White as this eccentric guy that lives at the top of his hotel and hasn't been seen in, 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be the Howard Hughes type that we were talking about earlier. Right? I mean, and he lives up in the penthouse, and then he has
apparently he's in casinos and defense contracting.
And satellites.
Because of course,
happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap.
A lot of overlap.
Well, surely he got the defense contracts through his mafia connections.
I mean, how else do you pick up henchmen?
Once you built a hotel, you can build a satellite. They're pretty much the same.
And you're like, how can I launder this creepy money? Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't know. At this point, the movie becomes, like you said, it kind of slows at some point to a crawl. And we know that at this point that Felix Leiter's kind of involved, and they're suspicious of Willard White. I say Walter White because they keep ending up back in the desert for some reason. And when they're driving off in that in the hearse with the corpse in the back, he's sitting in the front seat between two very obvious mafia hitmen, because you can't design. I mean, this is 71. The first Godfather had come out, right?
72.
Oh, 72. So this is still early. It's like, because they're coded as mafia
Well,
guys.
I mean, the book had been out by then.
Well, no, but like the mafia jokes. Like, if you told me these guys were, it's like how nowadays if you make a mafia movie and you don't have a soprano in it,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Like, if you told me these guys were extras in The Godfather, I would have believed them, because they're like, yeah, we're gonna take you to the funeral parlor. Like, it's almost offensive. But we get a scene where Bond goes to play craps. And at the craps table, he meets a woman named Plenty O'Toole, and he goes, and she's like, and he goes, what's your name, Plenty? And he goes, and he goes, Plenty what? He goes, O'Toole. And he goes, oh, so you're named after your father. Because why not? And then Bond takes out 50 grand. And they're like, and the table guy goes, calls over the floor boss, and he goes, can we give this guy 50 grand? And he pulls out the slumber co, and he goes, yeah, the guy's credit's good. Mr. Frank's credit's worth something. I'm not in the mafia. And then he tips the guy like 3 grand, and he takes Plenty O'Toole 5 grand. They go up to the room because Plenty O'Toole wants to see plenty of his tool. She gets naked immediately, like every woman in this movie. Guy Hamilton's a little lazy on the screen cuts. We'll get to that later. It's cold in a pool where someone drowns. And she gets thrown out a 3rd-story window into a pool.
But they didn't know there was a pool.
They didn't know there was a pool. And that's when he hooks back up with Tiffany Case. And that's when they decide to set up this weird plot in Circus to smuggle the diamonds. Right?
The real diamonds.
Real diamonds. They're trying to find the real diamonds. And that's when Felix gets back involved. And I know for you guys who've been listening to this one seems like we're really trying to get to the plot, because the plot is super heavy. This is probably the heaviest, most complicated, convoluted plot, other than possibly On Her Majesty's Secret Service or Thunderball. But the difference is this one is so lighthearted and fun. The other movies are so heavy. This one, they're making jokes, and it works. Anyway, anyone else want to pick this up? Because it's weird from here. No, I mean, honestly, it's weird. This movie is effectively, I don't want to say it's ground to a halt, because when you're watching it, you don't feel like it's stopped.
But looking back on it, you think, where did everything go? Like,
well, because there's these long scenes of exposition where, luckily, Guy Hamilton, as a competent director, is cutting in other things, so it feels like it's flowing. But to just for me to recreate plot is rough, because I'm not going to repeat 9 pages of exposition. But really quick, they end up in Circus, and it does a Bond thing that Bond things actually really Bond, super Bond, which is, hey, something new, let's show it off, right? And so Circus must have opened fairly fairly recently after this movie was being filmed, or before this movie was being filmed. So let's show something new. Fine, it's neat. They lovingly filmed this. In fact, so much so that Bond is in an observation deck 3 floors up, and they're just like, let's show some acrobats. And you half expect Two-Face to come in to kill Chris O'Donnell's family.
oh.
Not as good of a movie. You'll just throw that out there. I mean,
Well, at least we get the shot where Bond and Felix are looking at the acrobats like,
Yes, they all come by and Felix is like, of course she's not going to slip by. We have at least 30 men watching every inch of the... What? And meanwhile, she's escaped somehow because Felix was not paying attention. Shocker.
To be fair, that was probably the single worst situation you could be in, like with flashing lights and wild animals.
Lots of people, dark rooms.
Right, that elephant
African women turning into gorillas.
Yeah, that's true too.
The elephant playing slots and winning and then cheering.
Yeah. That's distracting.
Oh man, I keep wanting to call her Honey Rider, but it's Tiffany Case. These are all terrible women names. Bambi and Thumper.
Holly Goodhead.
Holly Goodhead.
Yeah.
Sylvia Trench. Plenty O'Toole. An Irish lass, Plenty O'Toole. Tar. But yeah, so we end up in this weird kind of sequence in which Bond is pulling off a version of the Rat Pack's Ocean's 11, where they're trying to get through a casino with a bunch of diamonds. And Bond is able to sort of do it by tricking, by getting Tiffany Case first at the blackjack table, and the blackjack dealer, who's also a black guy dealing blackjack, to deal a card that says, go to play balloon squirt, or whatever it is. And her balloon pops, and she gets a stuffed giraffe filled with diamonds.
Much to the disappointment of that one kid.
That one kid
who
didn't read the script and didn't realize that the mafia controlled the casino. And the guy practically grabs him by the collar and goes, "Look, kid, shut the fuck up."
I was so waiting for him to do that. That would have been great. He's like, you're fucking with a CIA operation, buddy.
I almost wanted Mr. Kit to show up and end the kid. Yeah. Like, it would have been like a Sopranos that loud music starts playing and he just Scorsese's him out of this movie. Like, that would have been amazing. And so Tiffany Case grabs the whatever it is, the chimp
bear with diamonds in it, I guess. Then
we never see the diamonds, so we assume there are diamonds in it. And then she walks out of the movie for about a scene and a half.
Right. She kind of leaves Bond. She was supposed to meet up with him there and pass off the diamonds, but instead, because she felt like she got the cold shoulder, I think, she went and sent them off to a different smuggler.
And the other smuggler got them to White's space exploration.
Aerospace complex just outside of town.
Yeah, and so she's driving this beautiful Mustang GT from 70 or 68. I'm sure I could look up the year, but I'm not going to because, we're drinking whiskey and talking about a Bond movie. But one way or another, it's a beautiful fire red Mustang. And they realize that there's this one guy who is part of White's organization, and he's driving a Ford Astra van or whatever. And he goes, and Bond, of course, being not American, goes, "Follow that minibus," which is great. My Scottish accent is getting worse. Oh, good.
Drink more whiskey.
I know, right?
Switch to Scott.
and ultimately what happens is that Bond sneaks into the back after a very horrible gas station scene. No one?
Yeah.
No one?
Well,
no one?
He has her drive her car in front of the van and pretend she's just a mouthy asshole, I guess, and that she's demanding gas. You put it into her car.
Get your hand off that hooter. Sorry, I
blocks him in, and then somebody else is getting gas, wants to get gas right behind the van, and so he's sandwiched in and can't get away, and that lets Bond slip in through the back door, which the guy behind them also neglects.
Is cool with,
Yeah, he's just
everyone assumes that the mafia is trying to kill people, and apparently you're fine.
Right.
It's also neat because we see a very 1970s Vegas Strip, and we see a very 1970s, Vegas is over, we're in the desert. And when we're in the desert, we end up driving to apparently a chemical weapons factory or something owned by White. They end up driving into a parking deck, which sinks into the ground, and Bond ends up in this weird space bay, and he ends up, and I say space bay, we'll get to space, which is weird, because...
This is where it gets just crazy.
Act 3 of this movie turns into a cartoon. I mean, I think we can agree.
I think take the excess, every excess that Bond does, and all of his movies, and this movie is just like laying that groundwork. And it's like, even with Goldfinger, it's like just that third act, everything over the top. This one does all that and more. You've got your secret base with laser weapons and fake moon landings,
doors that go.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what more do you want in a secret lair?
You have, and we'll get back to the hotel in a minute, but of course there's also a secret penthouse with a separate elevator and room for Bond and gas in the elevator just in case Bond
and a hell of a bathroom.
And a hell of a bathroom. It's a throne with like 9 phones and a pivoting seat because Bond is like literally pivoting on his seat.
And weren't there TVs in there too?
There were TVs, and one of them showed Bond, which is awkward.
He's got a TV showing himself on the commode.
I mean,
hey, don't judge people's fetishes, man.
I was gonna
say, yeah.
Thank God you came up for a wording for that because my joke would have been like, some people, right? Sounds like an episode of that sex talk show.
Before you could take selfies, you had CCTV.
Would you like me to project my dick pic across all of the casino? Oh man!
So they tail the guy in the van.
They do
all the way in. He slips into the secret base and then poses as an inspector to find the
Klaus something.
Yeah,
Mr. Hersom frickin'
He's a radiation shield inspector. And he goes to go investigate their radiation shields.
And then it becomes an open door farce for a bit. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Oh, where are you?" He goes, "Are you new here?" And he goes, "I've been here for 3 years." He goes, "Oh, you're just from a different sector." "That's right, I'm from G sector. We do radiation shielding." And he goes, "Where's your radiation shield badge?" And he goes, "Why, I don't have one. You guys haven't sent us one." "Oh, I'm so sorry.
I happen to have an extra. Here you go." Just the
radiation
worst,
shield
physical
badge.
Security of any facility ever.
I mean, again, if you speeded it up and like underplayed yakety sax, you'd be like, "Of course, yakety sax." The whole kitchen, the Blues Brothers scene.
But that's where he finds that they are building the satellite with the diamonds.
Yeah.
Even though
under the supervision of
Metz.
Dr.
Who refers to himself as Professor Dr. Metz.
Because why not?
Yeah.
I thought he was doing a lot of teaching there.
You don't know. He could be like an assistant professor at Las Vegas U. You don't know.
Those are all like graduate research assistants in the lab there.
Am I getting full credit? Not yet. You keep asking so many questions.
Las Vegas U, the precursor to Arizona. Via Phoenix College.
I am getting off all of your correspondence right now. Yeah, no, and there's a cassette tape that Bond shouldn't touch. Foreshadowing. And
cassettes.
Yeah. And then ultimately the real Dr. Klaus comes in. "I'm here to inspect you," not at all awkward, with an English accent. And they're like, "The other one must have been a fake!" And so they start chasing him, and Bond is running off.
Get off. And he escapes the best way ever. He gets in the little... It's like a
moon rover or something.
Yeah, because I guess they were doing training or faking moon landings. I don't know what that was.
They don't quite explain what
they
that
don't explain
is.
it at all.
The guys in I love that the guys in the spacesuits were still moving in slow motion as if they were on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "Hey, no, come back here!"
And like one had like a shovel and a spade, and the other one had a pickaxe, and they're swinging them at Bond as slowly as possible. And Bond is moving at normal speed, and the other nameless gray shirts with police hats are just chasing him.
Also, is that part of their training? Like, hey, if you see a guy that everybody's chasing, just attack him with your weapons.
Just the guy go, "Who is this amateur?" Right? They make fun of the fact that someone's screwing up their shot, and then Bond climbs into apparently a fully active moon rover.
With little arms, too, that are wobbling around.
It's almost like a Lost in Space, like Danger Will Robinson, like clank grabby arm thing. It's amazing.
And he escapes the base, and they're finding, or they're chasing him on like 4-wheelers. and yet he's outrunning them.
Well, it's like I guess the idea was that he was in the Rover, which is equipped for such dangerous terrain or something, because the cars
really
are all
quick,
flipping over and driving over rocks and crashing. And...
For something that's meant to work on Mars, it gets some speed.
Well,
yeah, it's true.
I mean, and if I may, I could be wrong, but it seems like the English are making fun of American TV and films.
No.
Because so much, because the opening scene where they're in the plastic surgery clinic looked like something out of a Star Trek episode from 1960s. And then this looks like, I mean, other than a fake moon landing site, which is, of course, A, it's a fake Star Trek set anyway, but B, it looks garbage because he, steals the ship by driving through a papier-mâché wall. But then they end up out in the desert, and it looks also like Star Trek. It's just, kind of poking fun at it. Then they drive around in, because the security guards are driving some old, Dodge Ram or something. Dodge Charger. It looks like an old Dodge Charger. And they can't manipulate this, and so they send the all-terrain as though, again, it's a Bond movie. What's new and hot? Well, motocross or something. So they're driving over these in these giant... The tires look like they could float, right? They look like those pedal bikes you would drive out in a
Which comes in later.
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah.
But yeah, like John was saying, they're driving around chasing down Bond. And we have two cars that drive off into the distance on their own. Bond apparently puts a brick on this moonlander as he keeps driving. Bond jumps out to steal a motorcycle.
Should we also note here that this is a situation where Bond somehow knows how to drive a moon rover? He's just pressing buttons.
You just press all the buttons and everything works out.
Yeah. Drive a moonlander.
What else do you know, Mr. Bond? I know how to drive moon rovers.
I don't know. I think that scene was a missed opportunity because, he's in this futuristic device. He should have been, firing missiles or something.
Right.
That whole scene... He only survives based on the other people's incompetence. He doesn't do anything in it.
Pincer arms. I wanted to see the pincer arms get into it.
I know,
I don't.
Pinch some tires, fire some rockets.
This is the perfect time for us to have a Q gadget.
Yeah.
Something, it's just like a weird explosive, or he doesn't know how to drive it, so he just puts a thing on it and Q's like, Mr. Bond, don't worry, I've got this. And then halfway through, Bond's like, you're driving like an old man, Q, and then he takes it over. That would have been great. I agree 100%.
But no, instead we have a moonlander that's driving itself, or Bond's driving, and it I don't know, it's just weird.
It's pretty much going in a straight line though, and all the henchmen are just driving over rocks and over ramps and stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing?
It's almost hilarious because Connery's looking out the sides of this kind of bubble on the top, and they're just flipping over for literally no reason.
It's the police car effect, whenever your hero is being chased by a bunch of guys in vehicles, they're bound to crash in the most hilarious ways possible.
Well, and it's where this movie turns into,
and we get that too. We get the police car chase, the Blues Brothers type.
I was gonna say, and this is what foreshadows the next. It's not an act, but it's the longest scene in this movie when we turn into the Blues Brothers.
Because it really just continues the lunar rover chase into a car chase through the Vegas Strip.
Because all the cars essentially get destroyed except for one, and then the motorcycles are chasing the lunar rover, which is now empty except for Bond, who goes the other direction, and he gets in the Mustang and drives off with Tiffany, and then the last car just goes, "Call the sheriff." Right?
Again, mafia connection.
Again, exactly. Mafia connections. And
the sheriff is the most podunk American you could possibly think of.
Tarnation. We got to get ourselves
He is a predecessor to the guy in the next movie.
I was going to say, you could have told me it was the same actor, and I would have believed it. And when you hear him talk, he's also foreshadowing Joe Don Baker in the Bond movies under Pierce Brosnan, because this guy is like, well, shit! I mean, it is...
What in tarnation?
I mean, my God. This is outrageous. But they're they're trying to get the Mustang, and it really does turn into a...
If they played the...
Mark was sitting next to me, and he just was going...
They even drive up on the sidewalk, and I was like, oh, they're going through the mall.
I was gonna say the small has everything. The new Cadillacs are in early this year. No, 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 no. It's one of those things like we want to do Blues Brothers on Myopia, the main feed. We may never because it's too perfect of a movie, and it's all satire. I know some of us hate this movie. Maybe someone at this table. I hope no one at this table. But it references too many other movies.
The sequel, yes.
We should do the sequel. We should do the sequel because the music is good. The rest of the movie is a train wreck. The rest of this movie, however, the one we're actually here to talk about, becomes a cartoon.
But you've got the police cars. Like the scene that did it to me was when Bond drives into like a car park, and you've got police cars chasing him, and they're going all sorts of different ways, and somehow he's still outmaneuvering them in the car park.
Right.
And they end up like going one on top of each other, and he drives up a
ramp.
A ramp of some sort.
Like a car tow. Like a trailer.
Yeah. He drives up that and just airs this car, and then the police car inevitably follows,
which is my
crashes.
favorite, because of course the police would do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh well, he just took a ramp. That was sweet. Let's do that. We could do that.
And it works so well because, again, it's not Blues Brothers, so there's no one cop at the end just hitting his hat or whatever. But at that point, there's nearly a dozen smashed up cop cars just in this parking lot. You didn't talk about my favorite guy. There's just a guy in a white Mustang who just backs out. Because Bond flies by, a cop car flies by, and he's like, there couldn't possibly be a second cop car.
Looks clear.
Backs out, and then two other cars hit it. Oh, man. And then Bond keeps, like, playing chicken with cop cars, ducking out at the last minute to cause 2 or 3 cop cars to hit each other. And so in this one little parking lot, there's a dozen disabled cop cars, and then the sheriff's like, Larry, you come in, Larry. Larry must have gotten him. Larry, oh, Larry. And then the Mustang comes by after the deputy's like, hey, Sheriff?
But I love that car park scene because they kept doing a wide shot. Across the street or something, and you saw all the cars moving around. It was like a game of Pac-Man or something. Just all these things moving around.
Yeah, Guy Hamilton's like, you're going to give me a budget this time? Let's do this.
Let's wreck all the cars.
I still wish they would have driven through a casino or something.
Yes.
That would be great.
Yes.
And there's this one old lady gambler who doesn't want to get up from her slot machine, and she just turns and looks, then just scoots her chair in as the cars fly by.
Oh, and it should have ended with them like driving through Siegfried and Roy or something.
and the audience going wild.
Yeah, after the car drives off, like you see a tiger run away in the distance.
Or they do a trick where they make the tiger disappear and they expect to pull away the sheet and nothing's there and there's just the Ford Mustang there and they're like, oh, hello. And just drives off.
I feel like had this been Roger Moore,
that's exactly what happened. Can you imagine that extra 20% if it was a Roger Moore movie?
And then that old lady would pull the thing and it would be like jackpot. And, yeah.
And then the guys
he would like collect on a sheriff's hat or something.
or Bond, the car gets smashed up, so Bond is trying to escape on foot, so when she wins the jackpot, the coins are what slips up the henchmen who are running behind him.
We need to remake this movie right now.
So many missed opportunities.
Yes.
I'm telling you, if the next Bond is Ewan McGregor, it's going to be that kind of a movie. Should be Idris Elba, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Where were we? We're out of plot. We're done.
Yeah.
He escapes the police.
He does.
And they decide to check into the White House.
Yes, they go back to where the person is looking for them.
Makes perfect
sense. Checks into his hotel, right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But they meet Felix there, who puts them under guard, I guess. So they've escaped danger for now, and she realizes that he's James Bond now.
She's going to just call you James.
And he decides he's going to do a little mountaineering on the side of the building.
And if I may, this is one of the most... I mean, it feels more Roger Moore than Sean Connery, but it is a very Bond-feeling scene because they've... Bond comes out of the bathroom. He's dressed in his tux again. because he feels if he's going to meet someone famous, he might as well.
When you go rappelling, you wear your rappelling tux.
Exactly. And Felix is like, well, we have Hamilton out here, and we have Johnson upstairs, and don't worry, you'll be watched, Bond. And so he's like, oh yes, and he pulls up the shades and he steps out onto the balcony, and then steps onto the elevator and just ends up on the top suite because it's perfect. Like it's all timed. It's timed as though it's a musical number, right? Like he just walks out, adjusts his tie, goes up, and it's almost a Pierce Brosnan scene. It doesn't feel Sean Connery, but Sean Connery proving he can do it.
Another missed opportunity. They should have had it where they give a quick glimpse of the elevator shaft and there's nothing there, but it just keeps walking, and the elevator comes up right as he's stepping off.
Yeah. I was just
Almost
thinking
in
like a more like a Daniel Craig one. He would get out on the ledge and it would do that thing where it's like, oh, he's on a ledge and he has to sort of establish that this is dangerous. And then he would get over and find, oh, there's an elevator. It's coming up, and he'd have to jump on it at just the right second, something like that. It's that difference between it's an intense action shot and it just being straight in my time.
In this, Bond could have just been walking down a hallway. It was all the care that he gave to being so high up on a ledge.
Well, and they also avoided the kind of Indiana Jones leap of faith where he's just timing everything. He's very careful. Right. He's just no, I've got this.
Just calmly walks onto the top, and then it goes all the way up, and there's that moment of oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Estimated wrong, and he's cowering as the elevator approaches the top, and he's oh good. Oh,
which
good.
To me is very Sean Connery Bond, because it's just sort of whatever, I'll just waltz right in, and then we're fine.
Yeah, no, it is, because he's even he has his feet kind of crossed as he's balancing on this railing on the top. But his hair's being mussed up by the wind, so it's not it's not Roger Moore where his hair doesn't move, or even Pierce Brosnan where his hair's just fine. But then all of a sudden he's didn't plan this. Where's the camera to make sure it's no, yes. Meant to do this all along. And that's when we get the reveal that Wynn is Blofeld, or White is Blofeld. I can't want to say Wynn because there's actually a Wynn who owns half of Hollywood, Vegas. White is Blofeld, and then there's another Blofeld. And then it becomes...
It's a 2-for-1.
And it becomes even more of a closed-door farce, where the camera keeps cutting back and forth between the two of them.
And it's such a perfect copy that it's even down to the cat.
So there are two cats, and the one cat is right. Oh no, the wrong person!
Which is the real Bond. Because at this point it doesn't matter, not Bond, which is the real Blofeld. It doesn't matter which is the real one, because they could just be any number of clones. They're just Blofeld.
We should establish, because this next scene requires it, the next Q gadget we get, which is this weird kind of gun that shoots hooks that Bond can hook himself into. So even though when the elevator gets to the surface, there's not a gap or a door, there's just a railing, there's just a flat ridge. What he's able to do is use these kind of hooks to swing along and kind of rappel in a swing from step to step to step to step to get into a gap. It's like a kind of window gap.
To the bathroom.
To a bathroom. He falls into a bathroom.
High-tech bathroom. Which I guess precedes GoldenEye by a bit.
Yes. Which is another classic Bond bathroom scene. Only a Bond movie would be bold enough to show us a shitter, I guess. But it's an oak toilet where there's toilet paper behind him, which is golden because it's the 70s, so you had colored toilet paper, apparently. Hooray. And there's a bank of TVs, and there's a bank of phones, and then Bond is hitting switches, because apparently there's also a whole TV array with a remote control. And then he realizes that one of the TVs that turns on is a picture of him, at which point we have White going, "Oh, it's about time you got here." I don't know why I went Irish.
He's not Irish. No.
He had a Texan accent. "Well, shit, Mr. Bond. It's a good thing you got here." They didn't even play Texas Hold'em. Considered a lost opportunity.
No.
I don't think
Still
it was as
craps.
big back then,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Maybe not. Maybe it was just made up for ESPN.
That and Magic the Gathering.
Oh, the 90s. That and Sonic Spinball, I guess.
But he walks out of the crapper,
Thank you.
and to his surprise, he finds 2 Blofelds.
Personally, I stayed in the crapper for longer than that, but you know.
Well, obviously, Mr. White or Blofeld or whoever uses that crapper.
A lot.
Uses it a lot. He spends a lot of time on there.
Well, because even White has a line later. He goes, "I'll take this call to John." And she's like, "Wait, what? It wasn't Blofeld just being weird?"
You need to see a doctor, dude.
He takes that, like, I'll be in the office joke a little too far.
Not that office, the other office.
The real one.
Where I spend most of my time.
There should have been a Nixon joke in there, too. I mean, it was 71. Nixon was president. We could have had a weird joke.
No, Nixon was fun at that time, wasn't he? That was before Watergate.
That was before Watergate, but it's not like he's any less creepy before Watergate. Okay, regardless. So Blofeld reveals himself and reveals that there's 2 of them, and he has this weird tape deck thing that transmutes his voice into sounding like White.
Which is an awesome gadget.
And Q's like, "Oh, it's so simple. I gave one for my kids for Christmas last year."
It makes me wish Bond made more use of that. Or even villains made more use of that. Imagine what they could have done in these movies just by villains like, oh, it's the general ordering the nuke silo to set off a bomb. You know?
And it could have been more in this movie because he's trying to destroy weapons anyway.
Yeah, but as it is, they use it just for, like,
that one guy.
Blofeld to pretend to be White to manage a casino?
But also for not Blofeld to sound like Blofeld, right?
Yeah, because there's
like,
a miniature one in my neck. Or maybe it's his neck. I can never tell.
Because transistors.
Yeah. I mean, that's possibly the most gadgety gadget that ever gadgeted in these movies so far, because it has no other purpose and it's not a practical effect. You know, it's not like garrote wire in a watch. It's not a small explosive. It's a sci-fi technology that we don't see being used that cannot exist. The one in the phone, I believe, because it's huge. It's the sign of a 1970s answering machine, frankly. But, you know, it's a big piece of technology. The one is like, oh, there's also one in my neck, which is invisible for some reason. it's a cheat.
Yeah. And that's where we start losing interest.
Well, it starts being more of a Roger Moore movie. Mm-hmm. It starts being more, or even a Pierce Brosnan movie. Let's not just pick on him. Yeah. It's, I mean, I could say George Lazenby, but Lazenby was just like, I'm a Brooks Brothers model.
Just let him die. It's okay.
Lazenby's like, I'm not coming back. They were mean to me in reviews.
Then Bond just whips out a gun and kills one of Blofeld. And he doesn't bat an eye.
He pulls the good trick. He tries to scare the cat and see who the cat jumps to. And surely that's the real Blofeld. And that's who he shoots. But, surprise, there's another cat.
There's another cat, and the cat's like, oh, he's like, oh, clever, Mr. Bond, very clever, but there's another one.
But I think we're missing the big point here. We've seen this guy before. This is the same actor from You Only Live Twice, right?
Yes.
He's the good guy who was killed by a knife by the ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now he's Blofeld.
He is. Blofeld never dies. He just stays the same.
And apparently Blofeld wanted to copy this guy, this British agent, rather than Blofeld himself.
I like it. I mean, and it builds on the conspiracy. I mean, and John made a reach, but I'm going with it. I like it. I did...
Fan theory.
I will say, I did like Telly Savalas in On Her Majesty's Secret Service as Blofeld, but this Blofeld is much more... I mean... We talked about it. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is almost a different kind of Bond movie, but here it's really the gentleman villain. Like, he has a very polished demeanor. He has a house out in the desert, which is White's house. He kind of just assumes White's life, I guess. I mean, Walter White is in the. Willard White is in the desert. We'll get to that.
And there are no henchmen to be found.
No.
Blofeld is facing Bond by himself. No henchmen anywhere.
And not worried. He's not sweating.
Yeah, he's not at all worried.
And he's like, Mr. Bond, we'll discuss my plan later. I'm tired. But if I would tell anyone my plan, it'd be you, Mr. Bond. No, you and I, we go way back. It's very much the Austin Powers joke at this point, where it's just like,
why don't you just shoot him?
Well, it's why don't you just shoot him, but it's also, oh, you're also kind of my best friend, Mr. Bond.
You're the only one that understands me.
You're the only one. And he goes, just go down to your room, hit L. We'll make sure you get there just fine.
Lobby starts with L.
And then Bond is afraid that the floor is going to drop out and kill him. Surprise! Gas comes from the ceiling. And at this point, I look at Jeremy and I'm like, Kit and Wit have been gone for a long time, and Jeremy smiles that Jeremy smile. And then when the elevator gets to the bottom, they're the ones who throw him in a trunk. Yeah. And it's awesome. That's
awesome. Where they lose my appreciation. They've shown themselves to be very ingenious in killing people, but when it comes to killing Bond, they stick him in a sewer pipe that's being made. Like, they drive him out to the desert, they go to a work site where they're building a sewer, they stick him in a pipe, and just leave him there.
Yeah.
They don't try to kill him, they don't make sure he's dead, they don't do anything other than just like, well, I'm sure the workers who come in the morning won't bother to check the pipe that they're about to lay down. It'll be okay. He'll just be buried alive in a pipe that has access ways.
Which, again, I said this while we were watching it. I just like to believe that everybody in Vegas just sees a body in a pipe and is like, well, let's just not touch this. These things happen. It's Tuesday.
I mean, again, it's like a Scorsese Hoffa scene or something. It's like, it's out of Casino where they're just like, we get rid of bodies, and it's, I don't know, it's silly. There's a rat there, and he goes, someone smells like a bad handkerchief.
It's me.
No, he says like someone's a tart's handkerchief, referring to the, I guess, perfume he lands on when they're throwing him in the trunk, which is how he identifies him at the end.
Yeah, and he goes, I'm sorry, it was me. He apologizes to a rat, which is great. And then I guess the Dr. Droid from A New Hope shows up down the tube.
What exactly was
doing? Yeah.
Was it welding things? Was it just there to kill rats? Like,
I think it was just there to kill rats.
That is overkill, right?
I mean, it's neat.
Could she just kind of gas them, or what were the pipes for? Could you just fill it with?
Hopefully, they weren't water, because then you've got dead rats in your water.
Well,
Well, that would have made more sense if it had been like a pipeline that was flooded. That could actually kill Bond, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, even a sewage pipe, something, anything.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, this droid shows up.
It's a skateboard with a little electrical wires on it
that just flail around. I mean. And Bond's like, what the hell is that? It starts running.
We're going to feel really silly if there's like an actual oh yeah, there's a flaily electrical thing that something to the inside of the pipe. Totally.
Someone Google flaily electrical thing right now.
Oh, we call it a MacGuffin. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's the number 6 on the McDonald's value map, the MacGuffin.
But he escaped.
Surprise! Because when the thing shorts out, apparently it sends a signal to let people know something's wrong. And the construction goes like, "Hey, Louie, it's your turn to go down to the pipe to fix the thing." Of course, it's 500 yards away. And they open this hatch, and Bond's like, "Oh, thank you."
Bond in a tuxedo climbs out of the sewer.
I was walking my rat, and I must have gotten lost. And scene.
Again, they could have just killed him, but they didn't. They just laid him down nicely, pipe.
And if they had killed him and left him into the pipe, fine. Again, mafia hit, whatever. But he's just gassed. He wakes up.
It's kind of like he just takes someone that's knocked out and roll them in the carpet, and then, hey, we're done.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Considering that earlier in the movie, Tiffany Case finds a woman in with cement shoes, right? Like there's a heavy plank.
Plenty of Tool.
Plenty of Tool. It's like she's back in an outfit, but she's
only somewhat buoyant.
Only somewhat buoyant and only somewhat transparent. And she's strapped, or her feet are tied together to this hunk of wood sunk to the bottom of a pool, and you realize, oh, this is really a mafia hit. It's not a joke. And then Bond's just like, oh, that was a nice nap. Where am I? And he bangs his head on the ceiling, which is a tube. He's like, well, my word, where am I? It's a weird scene. I hope someone's looking up what happens next, because I'm out of words. They end up on an oil derrick. Well, what happens next is they end up to visit White's house, right?
To rescue the real White.
Real White.
Because Who was it that mentioned that?
It must have been Blofeld.
He goes back to Q, and they make a call to Blofeld, pretending to be the sheriff or something like that.
Oh, his right-hand man.
Yeah.
And saying that something's up with White, and he says, "What, at his summer home?" And they're like, "Aha, now we know where he is."
And Felix is like, "That's outside of town!" And Bond's like pulling up, covering up the receiver, and you're just like, "Thanks, Felix. CIA, right?"
Yeah. It's scenes like that keep the actor from returning.
We've got him now. Thanks, Felix.
Mr. Hamilton, why am I saying this line so loud? Don't worry about it.
We already have another guy for the next one. Just screw up the line. Regardless,
So they go to White's house out in the middle of the desert.
which you looked up, right? It is a famous.
It is.
Is
It's,
it really?
The Elrod House, I think is what it's called.
Elrond?
Elrod.
It's
Elrod,
It's where
okay.
you check your e-meter.
Oh. I was thinking it's where you check your rings.
It was a famous architect who's Lautner. I'm not very well read on architects, but I do have access
I
to
took a
Google.
class. I just didn't remember it, and Mark looked it up for me. Thank you. So Elrod Hubbard's house. Go on.
But it's a striking house, and it made us, hey, that's probably a well-known thing. But,
And so Bond walks up. Go ahead.
and he immediately runs into Bambi and Thumper, who introduce themselves in theatrical fashion, and then start
Kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, and doing backflips when appropriate, which is always.
And it's one of those rooms that if it were not a Bond movie, you'd be like, "Is this it?" It looks like a fake room, right? Because Bambi is sitting in a very oddly shaped chair. Thumper is lying on a stone fireplace. It's shaped
That
like
chair.
a penis. Okay. And then Thumper is lying across this, like, it looks like an Adobe like fireplace or something. Like it looks like real rock. Yeah. And then from the ceiling are like trapeze bars and like hanging bits, and then it like turns into this acrobatic fight scene where Bond gets the ever-loving piss beaten out of him. They are, and it's also like Kit and Wind where they're like, "Now Bambi, it's your turn. Is it my turn?" And then she like comes across the right, and Bond throws her, and she's like, "Oh, Thumper, will you help?" And she kicks her, and then Bond comes back and like, "Oh, it's so great."
Until they make the mistake of throwing him in the pool. They forget that Bond is a Navy man.
And Bond like is holding their heads underwater, and he goes, and Felix shows up with a bunch of CIA guys and like a Marine, and they're like, and he goes, "Of course you'd be at the pool, Bond." He goes, "Well, I just don't have the location yet of White yet." And he goes, "But no one's telling me." And their heads come out of the water, and he pushes them back down. And then Thumper just like gesturing down so she can get air.
I deal best with women when they're wet.
I mean, it's Sean Connery. I'm sure he felt comfortable smacking the hell out of a woman too. I mean, it's
Which he does a couple times
in this movie. Yes.
Not quite as bad as in previous movies.
Yeah.
But at least this time they have like a reason for him to be smacking them up. I mean, they're trying to kill him, so that's usually a good
And
reason.
in fact, for the first third of this scene, or the first 2/3 of the scene, hell, they're his equal, if not besting him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really like Mark said, they make a mistake by throwing him into the pool.
Because apparently he's just very adept at treading water, whereas
he draws his power from the water.
Because
He's a waterbender, really.
They had him, and then they throw him in the pool, and somehow he just kind of gets the upper hand.
Just holding their heads underwater apparently is enough to defeat them.
Yeah, well,
And then the CIA shows up, I guess.
Better late than never. Typical American.
And then White well, right.
he told them 10 minutes. They probably showed up 10 minutes, and I don't know why they... It seems like he has them doing that a lot. He tells Felix to do that, I think in Dr. No, too. Like, hey, hang out here for 30 minutes. I'm going to go check things out. Come back later. Why don't I just go in now? No.
You know, with the guns and the Marines. No, hang
Give me an
on.
hour. Let me give it a try.
If I were Felix, I'd be like, we got Marines and guns here. Let's just go in all together and we'll just hold them at gunpoint. No.
Gentleman spy?
I guess.
Gentleman spy.
Yeah.
And then they find White, who's like, "Oh, you're damp. Go on. You must have met Bambi and Thumper." And you're like, "Does the pool thing happen a lot? I think it happens a lot."
Well, they were just kind of in bikinis, right? Or at least...
But then he was locked in his room.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And again, this is where the plot becomes weird again, because White hadn't been seen in like 3 years, or when Blofeld took over. Like, he makes that clear, and so no one's really seen him in 5. He's a youngish guy, which is weird, and he also has a space program, kinda, and so you'd be like, well, the government should be keeping track of people who are launching missiles and have millions of dollars, and again, it's the Howard Hughes story in the future.
Well, they talk to him on the phone, right?
Yeah.
And you can't fake voices because it's not the future.
But then Q says his kids play with it all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's a deal.
I mean, and the only part that's really weird then is that, well, other than the fact that from this point on, the movie becomes On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where there's snipers on hillsides, and there's helicopter attack scenes on bases, and mountainsides, and yeah, no, it's weird. But then all of a sudden, White just shows up, and everyone's like, oh, you're still in charge. And then he's just like everywhere, and he's perfectly fine. It's not like, I don't want to leave. It's not like anything. It's just like, I'm in charge now, and it becomes another movie again, and everyone's characters change.
He's even in the helicopter at the end, which makes no fucking sense. Right? Like,
just cause.
The Marines or whatever it is are going to throw him out. Yeah, you're in charge of that company, so sure, you can ride along.
Well, and again, it reminded me on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where it's not a government, it's a private helicopter armada. And we know the CIA and the Marines are involved because all the helicopters are labeled Marines, which is how Marines, of course, label their attack helicopters.
But otherwise, you'd think they're the Army.
Right, I mean, ew. Gross. But the lead helicopter is clearly White's helicopter, and he's there with Felix, and they're just hanging out.
Well, apparently he probably makes the things, right?
I mean, why not? You make satellites, and you have English actors playing Americans whose accents go in and out saying, we've lost control of this helicopter.
So now the movie just completely dissolves into who knows what.
Action sequences.
Yeah, so Blofeld is fleeing White's hotel, right? In the guise of a woman? Because I guess the CIA is attacking. Right. The CIA is, I guess, surrounding the hotel, trying to get at him, and
somehow he picks up Tiffany.
Well, Tiffany's like, there's a cat. That cat looks familiar. Even
Why
though
was she getting in the car anyway?
No, she was looking for the woman holding the white cat. Right? Because she sees the woman holding the white cat.
And thinks it's suspicious somehow?
We don't, but which makes no sense. That's a plot hole, because I don't think she's seen Blofeld or the cat before.
Oh, but this also is immediately after. I like this random scene with Q. I don't think it falls in the plot at all, but like they flew Q in, I guess, to work on the phone thing, and now he's just screwing around, and he's got the little ring that like makes the slot machines always return coins or whatever, bars, and he's just going down, doop doop doop, each one.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, and it's I don't want to say it's an engineer joke because it doesn't make fun of engineers, but it's just like he doesn't care about the money. He just wants to prove that his tool worked. So he's literally walking down a row of slot machines, and as though it's like, well, we have to make sure it doesn't work on the one because the one could have just been about to do a jackpot. So he's just walking down the row, and he's like, well, if there's a case study of 10, it's actually a case study.
Research, yeah.
And the thing is, like, it is great because if it were a Roger Moore movie, he would be being chased by henchmen, and he would use the coins to just throw out, and so a crowd of people would be grabbing up the coins so that the henchmen would be... But meanwhile, in this movie, he was just literally be like, jackpot, jackpot, and there's just coins there. And Tiffany's like, the hell are you doing? She's utterly baffled. You're so lucky. He's like, it's not luck at all. And he talks about the ring, and he's explaining, and she is done, and she wanders off.
I love
Which sometimes you feel like Bond wants to do.
Yeah.
When Bond is, or when Q is explaining his toys, Bond is just sat there nodding, yes. How does this help?
Can I kill anyone with
Exactly, yeah.
And then he tunes back in when something blows up.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Bond is the original crank movie. If he doesn't have sex, kill, or drink every 30 minutes, he dies. Although this movie, frankly, other than having sex with Tiffany, he doesn't really hook up with people.
No.
No.
Oh, he almost does with Plenty O'Toole.
But she dies.
She gets
Right.
wet, but
And
not in the
thrown
bed.
Whackity schmackity. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, regardless, Blofeld kidnaps her, and they realize they have 24 hours because at this point the satellite has been launched because White ends up,
And the plot kicks in.
and then the plot wakes back up. They realize that, White realizes that Blofeld has been making orders in his stead, and he's like, so this satellite we've launched, can you abort the mission? And he's like, abort, 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 and they're like, we can't. Somehow we've lost control of the satellite. So the satellite wakes up and unfurls like an umbrella and shows that that's where the diamonds are. There's a giant laser controlled by Professor Dr. Metz. And Professor Dr. Metz has this laser that's controlled by cassette tape. Sorry, Blofeld's cat, Mr. Bigglesworth, just
But yeah, apparently that's the big secret of the movie, that the diamonds were being used because Professor Metz, he's the world's foremost pacifist, specialist in lasers.
Yeah.
And he knows that diamonds are a perfect sort of thing to amplify lasers.
And apparently he's on board because they're blowing up the nukes.
He's on board. It's the mutually assured destruction theory.
Right.
I got the impression that if you make everybody shit their pants in fear, no one's going to have war.
And like the idea is kind of like half like Tesla's like death ray, like we can because this will like override every other weapon, and then Blofeld's just like, yes,
All the weapons.
all the weapons.
Yes.
For peace, yeah.
Because like they show this random strategic air defense base in North Dakota, and then there's a missile, and then all of a sudden it turns red, and then all of a sudden clip art of an explosion.
Pew pew.
And then the Russian submarine, which they target, I guess, exactly. And
I would have thought a silo would have been easier, but apparently a submarine works just as
they
well.
know where all those
A
Russian
submarine
subs are.
shockingly close to Hawaii disappears, and then all of a sudden a line of missiles in Red China. And they say Red China. That's not me being Clark Howard. It's Red China. And then the guy bursts into flames. And the best part about this is later we get this weird like NPR report of like, we have confirmation that there's been an attack on a malfunction of a nuclear missile in America and in the USSR, and that there's a meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Chaps. Although there's
That's
other
an entirely different
my
meeting.
word, Howard. Joint Chiefs of
You went to
Staff.
that, chaps. I was... Okay.
Assless? Yeah.
Well, you know.
And then they go, and there's an unconfirmed report in Red China, and I'm just like...
So USSR is on board with NPR, but not Red China.
Oh, I mean, but it's very much like, there's this report, so there's communication, everyone's on board, and then the Chinese are just, whoa, crazy! That Dr. No is still fucking stuff up. In Jamaica, I guess. Or whatever. But the ninja army will show back up, I guess.
Yeah.
You only live twice, right, guys?
So they are with White in his headquarters, in his penthouse, where Blofeld has set up camp, and has little models for all of his enterprises around the United States.
So White Industries.
Right. And
then
Bond
Bond-
is saying it could be anywhere.
Racist much?
From Maine to Oregon and whatever to whatever. And he, what was it?
Like
Baja,
Southern California, yeah.
And he says, Baja? I don't have anything in
I
Baja.
don't have anything in Baja,
How bad is it when a Bond movie concludes in Baja, California?
To be fair, it's off the coast.
Right.
Well, and I mean, to your point, how bad is it when the plot is figured out by a geography lesson and Bond's walking across and I was like, it could be anywhere from Alaska to Florida, from Maine to New Orleans, from Baja, California. I don't know anything in Baja, California. And you're just like, Baja's not part of America. And then cold cut, wakes back up in Baja, California outside of an oil derrick.
on the oil derrick, which is apparently the command center for the death ray laser. And
then a young Michael Bay got a plot line. You could stay awake just to hear your breathing. Yeah, no. This is a weird scene because
he randomly has Tiffany there in a bikini because
he didn't kill her. He's just like, I need some arm candy.
Did she try to like sell out to him?
She tried to portray it, didn't she? I think she tried to go with like, well, this is the way the world is going to end up, so I may as well be on the right side, at least until someone comes to rescue me.
And then Bond shows up, and she's like, I'm on your side! And she screws it up.
Yeah.
Royally.
Because there's the thing with the tapes. The tapes somehow control the satellite, and he has a decoy tape, but they search him head to toe when Bond just sort of waltzes up and says, hey, I'm here. I don't know what he was
effectively.
Right.
He did the Bond equivalent of knocking on the front door.
Hey, it's
on
Bond.
This oil derrick.
Mind if I come in? Sure. We're going to search you first, though.
And it's awesome because he parachutes in with these, and he ends up in a giant hamster ball, an inflatable hamster ball, and he just walks right up to a dock, and the loudspeaker goes, guards to dock A, and Bond ends up docking this thing, and he ends up sitting and goes, hello, I'm from the pollution inspection. I thought I'd start here.
Take me to your leader.
And they're just fine with it, and they take him to their leader. It's awesome.
Not to the jail, not to just tell him to turn around and go home, but no, they take him up.
This man in a pressed black suit has shown up and claimed to be some sort of inspector. Fine.
He's got papers.
He says he's a Mr. Frank. Oh, wait, nope, Miss.
But I also like that he tells Blofeld tells Tiffany to put some clothes on because she's distracting all my henchmen. And she comes back in with like almost the same outfit. She has some sleeves maybe, and it's like a slightly less revealing bikini, and everybody's just like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank God.
Yeah. Because I guess she packed her
Blofeld
bag
makes
full
a
of...
cheeks joke. Hold on to your hats, people. This movie is so weird. I just enjoyed a movie for 2 hours on the nose, and I'm just thinking about it now, and I'm just like, oh my God.
I was waiting when Bond puts the tape in there. I was waiting for him to say, "Hey, I could have put something else in there."
It would have been great too with the wrong tape went in and they started the launch codes and it just started playing the march music over the speakers. And you're just like, "My God, it's the wrong tape." Okay, so Bond realizes that back in the scene in White's Tower, the penthouse, that he goes, "There could be a tape. It could be anything." And he goes, "Yes, it could be even as small as a cassette." So Bond is captured with a cassette tape, and he's like, "You're right, Mr. Bond. It was the cassette tape. How clever of you. And I'm sorry I ruined your suit." And you're just like, "All right, gentleman villain," because he's wearing this beautiful black pressed kind of suit, and there's a broken seam, and so you see the insulation. And Sean Connery even looks at it and goes, "Suit."
It was mine.
And Blofeld apologizes, and you're like, "Damn right, of course he apologizes for ruining his suit."
You're gonna pay for this, Blofeld. We accept credit and MasterCard.
I was gonna say, and you're listening to a bunch of guys who are wearing, Mark is dressed like a person. We have two zipped up sweatshirts, and I'm wearing a novelty T-shirt that says Dr. Pepper, and we're talking about how good Bond looked in his suit. For the final episode, we'll all wear tuxedos.
This is radio. We can just say we're wearing tuxes now.
I'm wearing a dickie and a cravat. I'm drinking out of crystal as well. It's a Shabazz glass. I'm sorry, guys. I imagine you thought there was something classier, but nothing here is gold printed. Even my wedding ring is white gold. I'm not even 70s classy.
So Tiffany slips the tape to him when before he goes to get his tour of the control room, and so Bond has the tape again, and
he has the eject button.
Right, because apparently he's playing the character of the spy who's just being a dick at this point. I guess, like, I don't know, eject your thing and let your balloon go, whatever it was. But he switches the tape and then lets the balloon go outside to let everybody know that mission accomplished. We got the tape switched. And
then Blofeld realizes he's up to no good, right?
No, really?
Yeah, he's like, "You're not being a gentleman's spy at all." and so he tells the henchman to search him, and so he slips the cassette tape back into Tiffany's bikini bottom, and like Mark says, he releases the balloon when pretending to tie his shoe. He tries to escape and gets tackled. And then Tiffany runs over and she goes, "Don't worry, I switched the tapes out." And he goes,
Baseball.
What does he call her, a bimbo?
Like stupid twit or something.
You stupid twit, you've killed us all. Because women become suddenly incompetent when the plot requires them to know anything.
To be fair, she wasn't the most competent of
Except for in the opening scene when she thinks to fingerprint him.
Yeah, but other than that, she's just been your typical kind of Bond girl who's just there.
And, yeah, I mean, really. And at this point, thankfully, the Felix sees it along with White, right? Because he's like, well, there's no low-pressure systems for 100 miles. It must be the signal? Question mark? Because
Science.
Bond didn't come with a flare. He had nothing else.
He could have just said, "Give me 10 minutes," and it would have been just as believable, if not more so, really. So the Marines attack.
And then it turns into On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where there's a helicopter war against a base, effectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Henchmen with hard hats and outfits.
Although
they have like the full jumper and everything, and like.
I mean, if you're gonna
shop
have
at
an
the same
army,
store.
you want red shirts, brown shirts, and gray shirts, and the occasional black shirt with a lightning bolt on his helmet.
I mean, I guess they were supposed to look like oil derrick workers, maybe. But that's
none of them look like Bruce Willis.
There are a lot of guys there for an oil derrick.
Yeah.
No one got clubbed to death with a bowling pin.
But I guess the guys.
There will be blood reference. Jeremy got it because he's my friend.
All right, if there's a remake, the director has to have Blofeld drinking a milkshake.
My son! I killed my son! I'm sorry, we're done. We're good! Thanks. The Coen brothers could direct.
So they blow the shit out of the oil derrick, right? And so does the tape ever get switched back? Because there's like
I
an
don't think so.
impending
They just
attack on
blow the crap out of it.
Okay. Because, yeah, that's
Right.
what I thought. I was like, why?
Because isn't
bother
there
with
the like
tape
countdown?
then?
Well, and if you call
T-minus.
if you call it a plot device, you set up the timer, right? You set up a count. You make the plot of the third act accelerate because there's finally a deadline. There's a countdown. But how do we illustrate a countdown, gentlemen?
With a guy who's speaking the time. Yeah.
And you've got a picture of this guy. We even get a pan across because so much of these things would be just a voice on a megaphone or a voice on the intercom system. But there's literally a guy with a shaved head with his fists equidistant. 6 minutes and counting. 5 minutes and 30 seconds and counting. And the world is burning around him. Nero is fiddling, and this guy is counting down to 0.
That man is just so engrossed in his job.
He is going to be Employee of the Month for June.
Really?
Like, he's going to win.
It's a shame they all died.
His last effort as a living individual should have been to take a photo from his wallet of himself to put it on the wall. Next to the month employee of the...
I thought you were saying he was going to pull out from his wallet a photo of a clock. I love you, clock.
It would have been even better if Bond comes in and he's like, Rolex, I prefer Omega. 7 minutes and count. Like,
are you sure about that?
He admires Bond's watch for half a second before, although Bond doesn't get a watch at this point.
No. So Blofeld tries escaping. He sees the writing is on the wall. He gets into his little submersible thing.
His bathosub.
His bathosub. Which is another word for submersible. And he He tries to escape using a crane to, I guess, lift it off the derrick and into the water.
Yeah.
Bond takes out the guy operating the crane and decides to have fun.
I just starts using just a wrecking ball and just starts flinging him around and knocking shit down.
He's just
And
fucking.
Blofeld's like, "What's going on, crane operator?" This whole third act is a cartoon, and it's wonderful.
And he just starts swinging Blofeld around like he's like you said, a wrecking ball, and he slams Blofeld several times into the control room with our buddy Clock guy, and he just destroys the shit out of it.
Well, and it's funny because if it were a Pierce Brosnan or, a Roger Moore movie, the joke wouldn't have gone as far. Like, Blofeld would have just been like, release me, and it would have just been hovering in the air as the CIA shows up. But here, Bond is getting out some benches and slamming him into things. But we forgot, I guess, subplot 9A, which is that Tiffany is now running around. she's trying to figure out what's going on, and like this guy is leading her out to be executed. Then the guy gets shot, and so she's just like, "Oh no!" is running around.
Well, she picks up the gun and she's like, "I'm on the good guy's side now, I guess," and starts shooting up all the other guards, but she's terrible with it, and it knocks her back
off the derrick.
And so rather than, say, blowing out her shoulder and dropping the gun, or it being too strong and her just, like, flinging it over her shoulder, she stands in a shooting stance, and it's just, like, throwing her back like she's a toy soldier, just like, dig, splash. And Bond, who is starts out hanging underneath the derrick because, of course, they capture him and lock him in a supply closet.
They could have just shot him. They
could always just shoot him. And then he ends up hanging underneath this oil derrick like it's the Cloud City. And he's Luke, and he's just underneath hanging from rafters. And there's gunshots exploding around him like squibs for no reason. There's no helicopters in the shot. They just shoot at him. This movie is a cartoon in the last act.
So they blow the shit up out of it, and I guess he escapes. They don't really see. We don't see like everybody.
Well, he dives off the platform.
Bless you.
Right.
I guess when it's about to blow up or something.
But then it just cuts to them. They're on like that passenger liner, right? It's like the final scene.
I guess it's assumed they're
defeated the bad guys.
Yeah, one of the helicopters probably picked him up.
Yeah.
But it's unlike any Roger Moore movie, or even I think at least one Sean Connery movie where he's not in like a raft with Tiffany Case and then they pick him up, right?
Yeah.
From Russia with Love ends that way. Like, it's just like this idea, the movie ends, and I guess it's because it's supposed to be a revenge tale and it's not supposed to be a love story, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of a nice close, right? I mean, I liked it.
Well, we're not closed yet because we get on the ocean liner and they're in the Willard White suite, and room service arrives.
Yes.
And Bond and Case are there, and room service is Mr. Kidd and Mr. White or Mr. Wint.
But the reveal is good because White and Felix are even waving, and Felix is like, we'll tell London that you're on your way, and he goes, just don't tell him the way I'm taking. He goes, and White's like, don't worry, we'll tell the captain to go around for a bit. And you're like, does he own everything?
Apparently, yeah.
And then
White
everyone's waving, and then you see the camera kind of pan lazily down, and then you say Wint and Kid just like looking around, you're like, there's gonna be an epilogue.
Yeah, but that's the brilliant thing about that is it's not until that moment that you realize Bond has never met them before.
Nope.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Well, and again, you realize that this movie's not going to leave a loose end. It's going to tie everything nicely together. And they're having a romantic moment where Bond is in a tux again, and she's in a long evening gown. And they're like, and she's like, I have one thing to ask you, James. And he's like, what is it?
It's unusual for the woman to ask this, James.
Yeah, and you're like, uh-huh. And then all of a sudden there's at the door, and then all of a sudden two cases show up, and there's a waiter, and there's a steward, and they show up with 2 trays, and it pans up, and it's that horrible ratty hair and that, you know, beautiful beautiful haircut, and they're wearing suits, and one's wearing white and one's wearing black, and they're like, compliments of Mr. White. We have oysters, and we have wine, and we have everything.
And a bomba surprise.
And a bomb of surprise. and when leans underneath, and he sets a time bomb underneath a cake shop in the least subtle and most cartoon ever.
And as Tiffany K says, well, what's the surprise? Well, if we said that, it wouldn't be a surprise.
And he's like,
is that a kind of cake, by the way? That's just like a
be.
dome? Just like a mound of cake?
Maybe like a baked Alaska or
that's
something.
what I was thinking
Yeah,
too,
okay.
or something. And
I don't care enough about confectionery
Cakery.
theory to
this is
really
where,
look into
if
that.
it were a myopia episode, we'd splice Abby in, but, you know, we just can't be bothered.
No.
But, you know, and then on top of that, and then it becomes witty repartee about the wine.
For no reason, apparently. Bond or Mr. Kidd, right? Kidd. He starts pouring the wine, and he says, "This is a such and such 59," and
after commenting on his cologne or aftershave,
and Bond says, "Oh, the wine smells good, but the aftershave smells horrible. I've smelled this before."
Yeah, and he goes like, you know, for a meal this fine, you'd expect a claret, and he goes, but our wine cellar is a little light on claret, and he goes, actually, the Rothschild 55 is a claret, and he goes, and I wasn't referring to the wine for the smell. I was referring to your aftershave, which I have smelled before. And then he takes off his, like, Mr. T necklace and strangles Bond with it. Meanwhile, I keep wanting to say Honey Rider. Tiffany Case runs into the corner and goes, eee! Then the guy lights the
kebabs.
The kebabs,
on fire and starts coming at Bond
because of course.
What was he gonna stab him with the kebabs?
I mean, they're on fire. How could they be more dangerous? They're kebabs.
I mean,
They're skewers.
I mean, I guess they could be like.
You're just gonna
metal
jab him with it.
skewers.
he was coded as flaming. And then Bond throws a bottle of liquor at him and he bursts into flames, which is
that's a bad way to
possibly
go.
the best thing ever.
Such a bad way to go.
Because the camera cuts back and he's completely engulfed and jumps into the water, and then he's still on fire in the water, and then you're like, oh, that stunt guy might have died.
And then he gets the drop on the other guy.
Because he's distracted. He's looking over the edge, or he's looking toward the edge. He's like, well, shit, he just died.
Because Tiffany throws the bomb cake, which I don't think she realized was a bomb, at him, and he was like, oh, shit, that's the bomb.
Bond flips him.
Right. And gets him with his hands between his legs.
And then puts the bomb in his head, and then flips him over with the bomb still in his hand.
I was surprised there wasn't like a little like whistle, like because it was like an effortless, like just sort of
toss.
Yeah. And then he doesn't hit the water; he just explodes. And in case you thought Kit and Wint were coming back, I guess one of them may, the other one is dust. He turns into vapor.
And thus ends the most interesting people in this movie.
Yeah. And then I guess Bambi and Thumper go off to make a much more interesting Disney movie. And that's kind of how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Oh, and Tiffany says, or Bond says, well, what was that question you wanted to ask me? And Tiffany says, oh, right. Where are the diamonds?
Like, how do we get the diamonds down?
Yeah. Because they're up in space, and you pan up, and there's a star.
Yeah.
She's all about diamonds.
Yeah.
She was born for diamonds.
Born for it.
Da-dun-da-da! And that's how the movie ends. So, gentlemen, what do you think? Mark?
I love it. I love the henchmen and storming the evil base. Yeah, it's goofy, but yeah, I like that. It wasn't. It was a good balance of everything ridiculous, so it kind of all worked to me.
Yeah, totally. Jeremy?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Mark there. I mean, it's I love it. It is pretty over the top at points, but it's pretty self-aware about it. It's, it says, let's throw in some light stuff to liven things up. And it's, I love it even more than when I saw it. I'm aging myself 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's my favorite, and it still remains that.
Excellent. John?
I have to agree that talking about it now, it kind of sounds stupid. And as much as we may make fun of it, it was entertaining to watch. That at no point was I bored really during this, except for a few bits during the Las Vegas scenes. But it kept good pacing. It had the great henchman, the villain. We kind of knew what to expect. But overall, it was a great movie.
You know what? And I'm going to wrap it all up by saying, it's a nice way to end Sean Connery because it learns all the lessons of the other movies where slow bits are sped up with humor. And it's overall a fairly, I'm not going to say it's light on plot, but it's a light-hearted plot in that it's funny. It doesn't get too gritty. It doesn't get too sad. Bond does get beaten up, but it's followed up by something humorous. Like nowadays, I think big budget movies often have to have that element of despair to be an action movie. Like the Daniel Craig movies are a perfect example of it. He wins, but at a great cost. Here, Sean Connery gets to be lighthearted. And what I would say on top of that, we often have talked about before, what's a good movie to start someone on Bond? The newer movies are almost cheats because they feel too modern. This is not a bad place for someone to start. The jokes are still funny. The pacing is pretty good. There's a plot, and it's not overly long.
And it's not overly 70s or 80s like some of the Roger Moore ones are. Or even the Timothy Dalton ones are, where what decade, obviously, this is being filmed in. I feel like
it falls into that good, there's like a couple sweet spots with Bond movies, where you're like, you could go like the straight up, like, spycraft stuff, which is cool. I like that a lot. But this is like the sweet spot of like henchmen and hard hats.
Well, and they're still practical. They're still like gadgets, but they're mostly practical gadgets. And at the end of the day, Bond is still being, a classic Bond. He's gambling, he's drinking, he knows stuff. But here they make fun of the fact that he knows stupid stuff. And I guess what's even more than that, it feels like this movie has a nice cap on top. It has a nice conclusion. It's not like these, but he got away at the end, which is, something we'll talk about when we get to Spectre, where it doesn't really feel like it has a finale. This movie is a nice cap on Sean Connery as Bond. And, if I showed it to someone, the only thing that I think ages it, a lot of times the music drops out. And there's scenes where you're like, why is the Bond theme not playing? Why is there not music when these cars are driving around and destroying things? There should be something. Other than that, it's a fairly modern movie in a way that a lot of 60s spy movies just aren't. Regardless, I do think we're out of time. I'd like to welcome Jeremy to our circle of Bond experts.
Thank you.
And I hope he comes back for the other... This is 7, so we have another 17. And hopefully you guys will tune in, because we're planning a couple extra special ones. But don't worry, because Bond will return in 2 weeks in Live and Let Die. Thanks, guys. We're out.
Diamonds are forever. They are all I need to please me. They can stimulate and tease me. They won't leave in the night. I've no fear that they might desert me.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.